Life of Fred, Financial Choices. Chapter 26, Failure. I am defeated all the time, yet to victory I am born. Emerson. Fred didn't have any rich relatives. None of his students had any significant amounts of money. Right now, the only path to capital was Fred's Alarm and Safety Company. He thought that sounded better than just Fred's Alarm Company. After reading several wiring books, he learned the difference between a capacitor and a resistor. After 10 hours of reading, it all started to make sense. And there are 52 common symbols in wiring. Fred found a basic alarm kit on the internet and located a student who knew how to install it. The only thing left was the selling. At first, he was thinking of going door to door and doing the selling himself. He realized that there was a better way. He knew many students who would be happy to pick up some extra money. He located a dozen of them and would pay them on commission. They would get 10% of each alarm system they sold. He bought 50 of the alarm kits so that he could get a wholesale discount. He bought advertising on the radio and in the newspaper. He paid $120 to the local government for the piece of paper called a business license. In all, he spent all his cash, $5,630. That left $13 in his kitten's pension fund. He was broke. None of the kits sold. Each was designed to only protect one window or door. If someone opened the window, it would make a buzzing sound. No homeowner thought that would be very effective. Fred hadn't researched the kits before he bought them. He had relied on the pretty pictures on the kit's website of burglars being caught and sent to prison. The dozen student salesmen all quit. Fred had failed. No, his business had failed. He had read many biographies of men and women who had accomplished great things in their lives. Every one of them had had many painful setbacks in their lives. None of their lives had been a bed of roses, unless you think of trying to take a nap lying on a thorny rose bush. Fred's Alarm and Safety Company was supposed to be his stepping stone from teaching at Kittens to founding a university. Instead of a stepping stone, it was more like a deep hole he had stepped into. He was worse off than before he had begun that company. Back in Chapter 1, we mentioned that Kingy had built a fort in the corner of the office so that he could protect himself from Fred's pet cat. Fred now offered the 50 unsold alarm kits to Kingy. Kingy was reluctant to take them because his fort had more than 100 doors and windows. Since Kingy was always in the office, no burglar was going to break into his fort without his noticing. Even for free, those kits weren't worth much at all. Fred had to try something else. For about a week, he investigated starting Fred's Lawn Care. He offered to cut lawns for $5. The kids in the neighborhood would cut them for $3. No Fred's Lawn Care. Fred's Surfboards. No oceans in Kansas. Fred's Kittens Tours. You don't need a guide to see the rose gardens. Fred's Party Planning. There were few parties in August. Fred's Pagers. Everyone has a cell phone. Fred's Travel Agency. Everyone uses the internet to plan their trips. You gotta say this for Fred. He's tough. He gets knocked down and he pops up again. Like one of those inflatable clowns that you can punch and it comes right back up again. Summer was almost gone. Tomorrow would be the first day of classes at Kittens. Helen was back from Hawaii. Her office had been outfitted with the newest hexaphonic double loopy sound and light system. For an extra $2,300, she got the planetarium add-on package that could project on her office ceiling the star configuration for any night in the last 1,000 years. She thought she needed that in case some student asked what the night sky looked like when Christina Rossetti was composing Twilight Calm, which contains the lines, "In separate herds the deer lie, here the bucks and here the does, and by its mother sleeps the fawn, through all the hours of the night until the dawn. They sleep, forgetting fear."
Wait, stop, enough. I, your reader, need to ask a big question. Back in chapter 10, you were talking about investing in the 5 asset classes and using fancy logarithms to show what retirement could be 24 years away.
That wasn't fancy logs. I was only solving exponential equations using the birdie rule, which every second-year algebra student can do. Fancy logs are used in second semester calculus, where we show that the area under the curve equals 1x, or 1 over x. From x equals 1 to x equals 7 is exactly equal to line 7, or 1n7, where 1n7 is the natural log of 7, which is log, lots of numbers, 7.
Log schmogs. I'm interested in that 24 years. Fred has gone bust in 7 different businesses. Alarms, lawn care, surfboards, tours, party planning, pagers, and travel agencies. Time's a-wasting. Are you going back on your prediction?
Heavens no. 24 years is my best estimate for individuals who do the preparation, 5,000 hours, who take the required action and who are willing to experience big-time failure. It's been a month since Fred began. In that month, Fred has been tossed on his back 7 times. He is broke.
Of course. That means that he is a month behind.
No, he's a month into those 24 years. In the calculations in chapter 10, I assumed a growth rate of $6 per year. 6% per year. That might be true for paper assets, but that isn't true when you finally start a business that succeeds. Let's suppose that you finally start that successful business in the 19th year of your 24-year quest. You'll notice that I'm being very conservative. I didn't say in the 8th year of your quest. I'm allowing plenty of time for prediction and for preparation and failures. In that 19th year, which is year 1 of the business, you have 5,000 hours of reading and other preparation behind you. You are now well acquainted with failure. You have learned, painfully, what not to do. If the business is founding a university, you might only have 40 students, have hired 2 teachers, and rented 1 strip mall store space. And it might feel like another failure is coming. In year 2, those students tell their friends about the wonderful education they are getting. 90 students enroll for the fall semester. Year 3 brings write-ups in several magazines and several requests for radio interviews, and 370 students. Year 4 is the year that 1,000 students enroll. Do you remember what that meant? 4 chapters ago, we computed that at this point, Fred's net income would cross $1 million per year. By year 5, you have 10,000 hours of study and experience in your chosen business. What might surprise you is that at this point, there will be only 100 or 200 people in the world who are your peers in your field. Unless you have lost your library, prison, or your health, unless you have lost your liberty, which is prison, or your health, you will be as rich as Kingy with his 17 safes in his fort, all stuffed with cash. Chapter 27, The Path Ahead. There were many unknowns in the path that lay ahead for Fred. He could not predict the future, but he could strongly influence it. The only handle by which he could seize the future was the handle called Now. But right now his age was a bit of a handicap. In about 12 years, he will be able to legally sign contracts, get credit cards, buy real estate, hire workers. This was a handicap that he would outgrow. In the opposite handicap, being a senior citizen with little income and preparation, that is really tough to overcome. Some people think of Colonel Sanders and his Kentucky Fried Chicken as an example of economic success later in life. When he was about 30 years old, he established a ferry boat company. It was a big success. He sold the company for a lot of money and established a company that made acetylene lamps. Acetylene lamps. That company failed when electric lamps became popular. When he was about 40, he lived and worked at a service station and started cooking chicken, ham, and steaks for the customers. He served them in his service station living quarters. You can't do that nowadays. After another 10 years, he had put the final touches on creating his secret recipe for cooking chicken in a pressure fryer. Finally, when he was 65, he traveled around the United States and sold franchise rights to people to open KFC restaurants. When he was about 74, he sold the Kentucky Fried Chicken Corporation for $2 million. Fred thought about his height. He had been 36 inches tall for several years now. That might be a difficulty if he wanted to become a bullfighter or a policeman. But founding a university doesn't require being tall. He had read the biographies of many great people. A bunch of them had been imprisoned. If you can't name at least 3, you haven't read enough biographies. Fred asked himself, what if I have to spend time in prison? He knew the answer. I have hundreds of books that I need to read there in order to prepare to found a university. Fred wondered if there were any other obstacles that lay in his path to wealth. Dying was the first thing that came to mind. It's not just grandfathers and grandmothers who die. Pedestrians get hit by cars. Wars kill civilians of all ages. Bullets fly around in many inner cities. Fred giggled. He wasn't worried about the afterlife. He knew what lies ahead after he dies. He giggled thinking about what the obituary in Kit and Caboodle newspaper might read. Fred dies in midlife. That would be so silly. He thought about ill health as a barrier to founding a university. Again, there are no guarantees that he will be able to achieve any goal. But he knew that good health habits increase his odds of success. He exercises. His jogging is legendary. He works out in his office using books as dumbbells. He doesn't smoke or drink. He isn't fat. He doesn't worry or fret. That can take years off your life. He flushes and brushes his teeth and sees the dentist regularly. His eating habits, however, need a lot of improvement. Drinking sugary slush and skipping many meals, it's no surprise that at 6 years old, he is only 3 feet tall. Fred had read a biography of Colonel Sanders. When the colonel was about 19 years old, he married Josephine King. When he was on a business trip, his boss fired him. Before he could get back home, Josephine gave away all their furniture and left him. Josephine's brother sent Sanders a letter. She had no business marrying a no-good fellow like you who can't hold a job. Fred knew that one very important key in founding a university, or any other major life goal, is to have a supportive spouse. Choosing the right one is one of the 2 or 3 most important decisions of life. Fred wasn't quite ready to do the marriage thing yet. That was good. Marriage is begun when the partners are younger than 18 have about twice the divorce rate of those where the partners are older than 25. Some people spend more time choosing a car than in finding a spouse. Most Americans seem to just pick someone that they happen to meet in a class, down the street, or at a party. Is it surprising that we have such a high divorce rate? The alternative is to make a deliberate and intelligent effort to find the one who will be right for you. At the church I was at about 30 years ago, the minister told us how he did premarital counseling. One of the first questions he would ask the couple is, "Why do you want to get married?" If the only answer was, "We are in love," he would shock them by announcing that he didn't want to perform the marriage ceremony. He explained in the sermon that I heard that being in love is a very temporary state. Nature uses being in love to connect people together initially. They stare into each other's eyes, they sit on a blanket in the woods, some even write songs or poems. But after a year or two, the bloom is off the rose. That's the expression he used. No one is playing the game of being on their best behavior anymore. You have seen them when they are grouchy or angry. You know their bathroom habits. You have found the things that drive your partner crazy. You have found the things your partner does that drive you nuts. How do you make that deliberate and intelligent effort to find that supportive spouse? Here are some suggestions. Number 1. The encounters with the opposite sex during teenage and early 20s are often filled with shyness. When I, your author, was a senior in college, I took a statistics class. Across the room was a girl I found very attractive. She was outgoing and talked with the students around her. I never sat closer to her. I knew her full name. I never said a word to her during the whole semester. At the library, I saw a book, Overcoming Shyness, but was too embarrassed to pull it off the shelf. Overcoming shyness is a skill that can be learned. No, it must be learned. Unless you plan on living like a hermit alone on your farm, becoming competent in meeting people is essential in, number 1, owning any business, and number 2, dating. Number 2, to find a good life partner after you have become a competent dater, you will date dozens of possible candidates. Those that you date before that time won't be seeing the real you, only the tongue-tangled kid. Meeting dozens means that you are not marrying the second one you date. Number 3, make lunch dates, not dinner dates, for that initial meeting. There is no giant rush to intimacy. You are meeting in public, not at either one's house or apartment, just to get to know them a little. If he or she eats the mashed potatoes with his or her hands, that might be enough to let you be glad you didn't elect to spend 2 hours on a dinner date. Number 4, learn how to end a relationship. With that skill, you are committed to marriage after you have dated 3 times. Without that skill, you are committed to marriage after you have dated 3 times. Sometimes all it takes to end things is not phoning. If you don't know how to break up, then you certainly can't be at ease in meeting others. It places a tremendous burden on you if you have to decide whether you are going to marry someone before agreeing to the 3rd date. If you are dating someone who is not a competent dater, perhaps the worst way to dial down a relationship is to write a letter, especially a big long one, detailing exactly why they failed as a potential partner. Breaking up is hard enough without adding to their pain. Number 5, after you have dated dozens and are at the point of thinking this one might be it, 2 steps are important before you move on to being engaged. It's much easier to break up with someone you are going steady with than with someone you are engaged to. 1 step is spending a lot of time in a lot of different circumstances with him or her. See how they spend their money. Learn about any alcohol, drug, or anger problems they have. See if they treat cashiers and waiters like human beings or like scum. Meet the potential in-laws. Some in-laws can make a virtual hell out of your marriage. The other step is to spend a lot of time talking about the important things. other than just how lovely their eyes are. Talk about life goals, about religion, about the number of children you want, about finances. One important financial choice is whether you want to keep your money separate from theirs. If you keep it separate, then you will not have to be disturbed by the foolish, in your eyes, ways they spend their dollars. Too many marriages are ruined by fighting over a jointly held money. All of these suggestions are hard work. Do them only if you want to be happy.